Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. My name is Shaneria and this is Talk and Crime. We are back with another reaction video. But before we get started, let's subscribe and join the family if you are new here. If you are returning, hello, how are you? And let's get started.
A bad person.
I watched that 5-part story so you don't have to. That's Jordan, and she's telling us the story of her evil stepmother. Now, she named her stepmother Miss Tina. She said that her father had been married about 3 times since she was a child. The first wife was the mother of her little sister. The second wife was this woman named Wendy, who she adored. She had a long-standing relationship with her. Wendy raised her from the age of 6 when her mother passed away, all the way until she was 14 years old when her father and Wendy got a divorce. When Miss Tina entered the picture, Wendy and her father's relationship was just ending. And so when, Jordan was asking her father, like, hey, like, when did you meet Miss Tina? Like, how long have you guys been dating? All these questions. He's like, oh, about a year. And Jordan's looking at him like, a year ago, you were, still married to Miss Wendy. So how's that possible? So just off of that little bit of information, Jordan was really looking forward to this new addition to the family. So Jordan's having a birthday party and her friend, smashes some cake into her face, which isn't abnormal. It's something that kids do, teenagers do. And Miss Tina was basically trying to make little comments saying like, oh, you must have really bad friends. Like, people don't do that to others. Jordan said that once Miss Tina entered their lives, she kind of started losing a lot of her friendships. They started becoming very distant relationships. And she just started to isolate Jordan from her friends, from her family members, from her mother's side. She just made it harder and harder for Jordan to maintain these relationships. Jordan was prompted to share the story time because she was recently at a cousin's wedding in November and she took her boyfriend there, and that's when her father met her boyfriend for the first time. And so the father leans over and he's like, aren't you going to say hi to your stepmom, my wife? And she looked at him like, no, what are you talking about? And he's like, oh, we're still doing this? And Jordan looked at him and she was like, yes, this is forever. I have nothing to say to that woman for the rest of my life. So then the father's like, maybe we should sit down, we should talk about this. Like, this is something that we both need to, maybe work through. And so she's thinking like, oh, maybe he doesn't to this day understand. So she ends up calling a best friend and being like, am I tripping? Like, was he not aware of what I went through as a child? And the best friend who was, around during this time told her like, no, your father knew exactly what was going on and he was complicit. Her father was raising her full time at this point, and her other siblings were kind of spread across other family members. Her older sister was living with an aunt. Her younger sister was living with her own biological mother. When her father divorced Wendy, he ended up, getting together with Miss Tina. So Miss Tina started visiting. The first time she ever met Miss Tina was when she was 15 years old, right? Jordan used to have her own sense of style. Her father would never tell her what to wear or what not to wear. He would only say if things were a little too short or anything like that. So he picks her up one day and he's taking her to the airport to pick up Miss Tina. And he looks at her and he's like, take that belt off, the belt that he bought for her. And she's like, you've never told me to take something off. So after Jordan got to know Miss Tina a little bit, she basically told her dad, like, hey, I'm happy for you, do your thing, but I don't want anything to do with this relationship. Keep me out of it, kind of thing. At this point, she had a very close relationship with her father. She felt like she could have these heart-to-hearts with him. She didn't think that, backlash would ever come from something like this. So she used to have this little sign in front of her bedroom door that said nice people only. And so Miss Tina one day looks at that sign and she opens up her door. She walks into the room and she's like, oh, nice people only, huh? Well, I'm gonna come in anyway. And then she proceeds to basically tell Jordan, I'm here to stay. I'm not going anywhere. You're a child. You're not allowed to have opinions about me and my situation with your father, nothing like that. And Jordan's looking at her like, okay, cool. Jordan's like, whatever, I guess she's here to stay. So when she's looking through the office one day, she ends up seeing printouts about engagement rings. And so she ends up starting to pass notes at school with her friends, being like, oh my God, this woman's going to be in my life forever. And she's a gold digger. Now she says I obviously was a child. I don't know what this woman's financial status was, but at the end of the day, that's what it was giving for her. And so I guess this note magically fell out of Jordan's backpack one day and Miss Tina finds it. At that point, Jordan was like, I'm not writing anything about this. I'm just gonna, talk my piece, but not around you or in any way that you can find out that I was talking about you. Her father announces that Miss Tina and him are going to be getting married in December of that year, and he asked Jordan to come out to Ohio and be a part of the wedding because they were going to elope, and her family is out there, her kids are out there, all this, right? And Jordan basically tells him no, I'm not willing to do it, and eventually ends up spending the weekend with her grandparents instead of going to the wedding. So the father ends up going there by himself. Eventually Miss Tina moves to Texas where Jordan and her father live. Miss Tina ends up leaving her 3 children in Ohio with their father, who has full custody of them, and they end up moving houses. Now when they move houses, they end up moving
Sometimes you got to be worried about that because most women, they bring their children with them, especially when they are getting remarried, all of that stuff, right? All of the things. So Why did their daddy have full custody? Why did their daddy have them? And why were you not willing to have your kids, but willing to be around somebody else's kids? That's just a red flag for me. But let's keep listening to the story.
40 minutes away from the performing arts school that Jordan was attending for dance. And so she, was like obviously trying to plead her case and say like, I want to stay at the school. But when that didn't work, she was like, okay, at least can you let me go to prom as my like last hurrah with my friends? And, after, begging and pleading, they finally say no and tell her like, you can't go to this prom. I think what really bothered Jordan about the whole prom situation was that Miss Tina was trying to act like a fake advocate and being like, oh, I'll talk to your father. Like, we'll make sure you get to go as long as you don't wear a white dress because that's for your wedding day. Like, you can go to prom, right? And then after like trying to almost like play Jordan and be like, yeah, I'm on your side, she ultimately did not get her to prom. And so she just felt like maybe things aren't going to be that bad. So this began the pattern of things being like given to Jordan and then taken away at like a moment's notice, without really too much explanation on why it was happening. At that time, Jordan was a part of a dance camp as well. When she got dropped off one day, her camp counselor was like, oh my god, Jordan, I love seeing your face. You always have such a happy expression on your face. And at that time she would say like, yeah, like I'm a very bubbly person, like I tend to just have like a resting happy face, right? Miss Tina ends up making a little snide comment saying like, yeah, she has no reason to be that happy, alluding to Jordan's hard childhood, losing her mom at such a young age. What Miss Tina didn't realize, or maybe she did realize, was that she was starting to plant seeds inside of Jordan's head that she was not somebody that deserved to be happy, that the things that she had gone through should have scarred her and turned her into a bitter, like unhappy person. And she said that slowly but surely her happy resting face turned into a resting bee face. Jordan was really excited too because one of her friends from the camp actually lived in her new neighborhood, so she was just like, okay, cool. So she would start going on like walks around the neighborhood. She would start like hanging out with friends and stuff, and so she was starting to find some like normalcy, right? And one day she was out, and the rule in her
Imagine the stuff that this woman was telling her own children. If you telling other people kids stuff like that, or like putting it in their head that they're not good enough and stuff, I would imagine the stuff that you was feeding your own children.
in her house, as always, was be home before the streetlights come on, right? And so she's having fun. She comes home one day, and Miss Tina is just like yelling at her. She's like berating her. And Jordan's like, what are you talking about? She's like, how dare you go into somebody's house that we don't know? And Jordan's like, my dad has done business with her dad. Like, I've spent weekends at these people's houses. Like, we rotate. Like, they're very close-knit friends, right? Like, I'm not walking into somebody's house that I don't know. Like, it's not even like that, you know? But Miss Tina didn't want to hear that. So once the stepmom went off on her about going into people's houses who she grew up like rotating sleepover weekends at, all this, she basically realized, okay, maybe my stepmom isn't as close as I thought she was. And I was right the first time around when I thought there was something off about this woman. So when school year finally started, she ended up meeting these 3 girls, and she ends up becoming best of friends with them. And they become her strongest support system through these next 2 years. And so, you know, that's all Jordan had on her mind was like, let me get through these next 2 years. I'm going to graduate. I'm going to leave this house, and I'm never going to look back, right? So homecoming comes around, and somebody asked her to homecoming, but she didn't really want to go with that boy. She wanted to go with her friends. And so she's asking her parents, like, can I go to homecoming with my friends? And they're not really, you know, trying to allow her. It wasn't until her friend ended up calling her parents and being like, hey, can Jordan please come? Like, I'll let her wear one of my dresses. Like, just let her come, right? So her father ends up acquiescing. She goes to the homecoming. She has a great time. She wears one of her friend's dresses, only for Miss Tina to get upset and be like, yeah, that's so embarrassing that you wore another girl's dress. Like, you should have gotten a new dress. Like, making this whole deal about,
no, you want to play stepmama. You want to marry my daddy. Make sure I'm good. You the woman. Make sure that I'm good. You married with my dad. Play stepmama. Act like a stepmama. How was you when you with the prom? Like, you should have bought me a dress. My dad should have bought me a dress. And you should have helped me get ready and do my hair. Woman, like, honey, this woman, red flags everywhere.
nothing. Like Jordan said, girls share clothes all the time. I have clothes in my closet right now from homegirls. Jordan started off this relationship calling this woman Tina. She apparently got super offended by that and was like, no, you can refer to me as Miss Tina, or you can call me mom. But Jordan didn't feel very authentic calling her mother. She was like, yes, I called Wendy mother because she was a mother figure to me for over 10 years, right? And yes, I felt comfortable calling my sister's mom. But you, I don't know you. She even like tried to call her mom a few times, but it just felt so fake. She couldn't go through with it. And so she would tell her, like, I can't even believe you call Wendy mom. Like, I do everything for you. That woman doesn't even want anything to do with you. She hates you. All these things about Wendy. And then Miss Tina would go as far as to tell Jordan, your mother, your biological mother, was an unfit mother. She didn't raise you well. How dare you? This woman was dying of cancer. She had 3 children on her full custody, and she was doing her absolute best. Jordan said it was.
Tina would have been smacked. She would have definitely been smacked. And Daddy would have been just mad because who is you talking about? Watch what you say about my mother, pretty much.
Is she perfect? Probably not. But at the end of the day, she gave them everything that she could do. And has she been around, Jordan knows that none of this shit would ever happen to her. So now entering Miss Tina's children. She has an older daughter who's in college who barely ever came around. Then there was the middle child who was like close to age in Jordan, so she was the closest with the stepson. And then she had a toddler, right? And the stepson basically told her, like, watch her back. This woman likes to snoop around. She likes to listen to phone calls. He's the one that taught her how to acknowledge the conference light and be like, oh, somebody else is like listening into our phone call, and now it's become a 3-way. Like, you need to pay attention to that. Because Jordan would like have conversations with her friends, right? And then Miss Tina would drop little comments, and Jordan would be sitting there like, I didn't write that anywhere. I didn't say that anywhere where you could have heard me. Like, how do you know? Now she knows. Miss Tina was listening in on her conversations all these times. So now she was like, you know, peeping game and seeing that anytime she got on the phone, indeed the conference light was on and Miss Tina was listening. She said Miss Tina's kids did love her and they did have loyalty to her, but at the end of the day, that stepson definitely wanted to let Jordan know, watch your back. So, you know, Miss Tina started doing weird things to Jordan when it came to like the kitchen and food, and she would yell at her.
Wait, did I hear her just say that the son let her know to watch her back with his own mother?
And be like, come help me. And then when Jordan would come down and try to help her, she would get upset with her, like, you don't know the difference between cabbage and lettuce. Jordan's telling her, like, I don't know anything, just teach me. I'll do it if you teach me, right? Tina would just like go off and be like, you're wasting both of our times, and she's telling her, like, you told me to come in here and help you, and I'm telling you I don't know how to cook, and now you're getting upset. Like, how does that make any sense? If she's not yelling at her about how to cook or whether she's cooking or not, she's yelling at her about how she does her dishes. It's just like a constant nitpicking of Jordan, right? And so it got to the point where Jordan was like, I'm just not gonna do anything. I'm not gonna wash the dishes. I'm not gonna eat the food that you cook, nothing. So she started living off of ramen, rice and beans, things that she can warm up out of the pantry was all Jordan was gonna eat. Unless her father cooked, then she'll have something of that. But outside of that, she wasn't gonna eat anything that Miss Tina made. Miss Tina was also obsessed with having like this picture perfect image, right? And so if people came over, then she would tell Jordan, like, make sure you eat, like trying to keep up appearances, right? But God forbid Jordan added anything to the food, altered it in any way, Miss Tina would lose it. Jordan says a lot of this was able to happen because her father worked a lot. He was gone. A lot of time that Jordan spent was with Miss Tina. And so one day Miss Tina walked into her room and basically told her, like, unless your father's around, don't talk to me. Don't acknowledge me, don't speak to me. And so Jordan just kind of like sighed as, you know, Miss Tina was walking out the door. Miss Tina turns around and she's like, what'd you say? And Jordan's like, nothing, I didn't say anything. She's like, yeah, that's what I thought. Like literally punking a baby, a child. Only to have Miss Tina run to Jordan's father and be like, oh my God, Jordan doesn't talk to me unless you're around. Like, she's just so horrible. She doesn't acknowledge me. And then, you know, the father comes at Jordan sideways and Jordan's looking at her like, I'm doing what she asked me to do. She told me not to talk to her unless you're around. And, you know, the father's looking at her like, that's absurd. Like, that's outrageous. That doesn't make any sense. And she's like, yeah, I know that doesn't make any sense. I'm telling you that.
Now, come on, Daddy. You was avoiding the fact that this woman was mean as hell to your daughter. Why would a young lady tell you that her stepmother, the woman you chose, the woman you married, the woman you wanted around your children, told her these such things if it wasn't true? What child you know making up something like that?
I'm telling you it doesn't make any sense. So like, why are you believing this woman, you know? And so I think Miss Tina did a really good job of breaking down the relationship between Jordan and her father, making communications really strained. And, you know, he just wasn't there to see a lot of it. And because he wasn't there to see a lot of it, it's just unbelievable to think a whole adult would be doing something like this to a child, right? But lo and behold, she completely tortured Jordan for so long. Because of just all this unrest that was happening in Jordan's house, she just started spending more time at her grandparents' house, spending time at her friend's house, basically trying to do anything not to be back home. It just got worse. Miss Tina started making fun of Jordan's weight, saying that she had a muffin top, telling her that her jeans weren't fitting because her thighs grew, telling her all these horrible things that you should not say to a child, like, especially especially one that is forming her image and forming her self-esteem. Like, you don't just berate a child like this. And so, you know, Jordan, again, in efforts to not be home as much as possible, she joins cross country and she starts running. And she says, look, I'm not the type of person to run. I hate running, right? To the point that she lost so much weight that even her bus driver, who she has known, pulled her aside one day, which is like, baby, are you okay? Is home okay? Like, tell me what's going on. And she's like, oh no, I'm just exercising more. I'm just working out. But in reality, not only is she working out and exercising more, she's also eating only ramen and, you know, Uncle Ben's and Chef Boyardee. You know what I'm saying? So obviously this child is being abused in multiple ways at this point. Also, Jordan felt like she was a good kid. She had okay grades. Maybe she didn't do the best in history, she said, but outside of that, she didn't cause too much issues. And at the end of the day, somehow always found herself grounded. She was like, I don't understand why I'm always grounded. Either my phone is taken away or something is going on, you know? Messina had been told, Jordan, I'm not doing your laundry no more. Like, you need to figure out how to do that. So her dad was doing her laundry for her. But again, her dad works a lot. So Jordan was, you know, asking them, like, please just teach me. Like, I'll, you know, do my laundry myself. And I guess one day she forgot to bring her laundry down. Messina ends up going off again and being like, you're dirty, you're unhygienic, like, you're disgusting, and grounds her. She was on her way to go hang out with her cousin. And so she tells her, you can't go back upstairs. And then the next day she's like, I'm gonna allow you, again, that give and take situation, I'm gonna allow you to go to your cousin's because your cousin doesn't deserve to be disciplined when you're the one that's irresponsible. And God forbid Jordan has like skirts with like some Uggs on or something like that, because all of a sudden she's promiscuous now. And God forbid she has a favorite piece of article of clothing or anything like that. Now Messina has to take it, put it in a bag, and hide it somewhere. So when Jordan found a bag full of clothes that she thought she may have lent to friends or lost over the years, she actually just found it in a bag hiding in the office. And she's just like, so this woman's not like stealing my stuff. So one day Messina picks up Jordan from school and she's taking her to a dentist appointment. Now Jordan didn't want to have bread all up in her teeth. She only ate the fruit that she had for lunch. And so Messina ends up asking her like, hey, did you eat your sandwich today? And Jordan didn't want no problem. She said, yeah, I ate it. And so Messina's like, well, show me. So at that point, Jordan's like, damn, I lied. I'm about to get my ass, you know, chewed up. So at this point, she's very used to being yelled at. So when she takes out her lunchbox and opens it up and shows Miss Tina, and Miss Tina sees the sandwich, immediately she smacks her in the face. She smacks her in the face to the point that she knocks her head almost into the window. And Jordan is like baffled. Her jaw's on the ground. She's like, what the hell? She's looking at Miss Tina like, did you just smack me? And Miss Tina's looking at her like, take that look off your face. Move your hand from your face. Don't act like you're a victim. Just, she doesn't even know what she said at this point because she's just stunned. She's just looking at her like, you just put your hands on me. You know what I'm saying? So they pull her to the dentist. She hops out. She goes in there. And of course, her dentist notices that she's not her bubbly self. She's like, what's going on? What's wrong? And she wishes that she said something at that point, but she didn't. And she, you know, again, had been like taught to think like, I'm gonna get in trouble if I say anything, right? So she doesn't say anything. She gets picked up, and that's the very first time Miss Tina ever put her hands on this child. She also didn't tell her father because she just didn't feel like her father would even believe her at this point. Jordan and her family were actually a church-going family every Sunday, and Miss Tina would use that against her as well. Tell her that she's a deceitful person, that she is going to go to hell, all these things, right? And she really had Jordan questioning like her worthiness, her ability to be happy even, you know? And so she told her one day like, yo, it's really disappointing that like when the pastor asked people to come down to be prayed for forgiveness, you don't go down there. Jordan ends up going down there one day and being like, I need to ask for forgiveness. Like, obviously, like, Miss Tina's right. Everything that I'm doing is my fault. There's something that I'm doing that's making all this happen to me. So, like, let me go and ask God for forgiveness, and maybe, you know, all this stuff will stop. So Miss Tina would tell her, the things that are happening to you is because you have an evil spirit. So Jordan's family members, I think it was her cousin.
Wait, who got the evil spirit? I'm already over this woman. Like, this is crazy. Where does the line stop?
And her older sister would come down and take her out to, like, you know, the movies. They would take her out to dinner, just like to treat their little baby sister, baby cousin. And, you know, Miss Tina, of course, had something to say about that. She'd be like, oh, you're selfish. Like, you don't do that to your own sisters. Like, she's like, we want money. You guys don't give me allowances. Like, what am I supposed to do, you know? Miss Tina would say things like, oh, you don't support your sister in her dance. And Jordan would tell her, like, that's not my responsibility to know her schedule. Like, my dad just tells me when the performances are, and then we just go and support her. Like, it's not that big of a deal kind of thing. So when Jordan ended up having her own hip-hop style kind of performance, Miss Tina was like, your performance was very distasteful and trashy and all these other things. And things hit the fan when one day Jordan was out with her friends at the movies. She ended up not responding to her father's call. She says, yes, I was wrong. I should have answered back. She eventually gets home, and the minute she gets home, before she can even put the key in the door, Miss Tina ends up yanking the door open. She pulls her in, slams her against the wall, and she just starts going in on her. And she's just like, what's wrong with you? She tries to push her away. She runs upstairs. She switches her shoes, puts some sneakers on, put a hoodie on, and then tries to grab the phone to call 911. Miss Tina is at her. She's at her neck. She's grabbing at her. She's pulling her hair. She's scratching her. So at this point, Jordan's like, I'm not going to make it out the front door. I can make it out the garage. She tries to swing her arm around to hit the garage door. Miss Tina closes the door on her arm. And so at this point, she's pushing her off with the other arm. She finally gets her other arm free, and she pushes, Miss Tina off. She runs into the office, and at this point, she's looking at her like, what is wrong with you? Like, what is wrong with you? Stop. And Miss Tina's like, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? I'm assuming like she's just like absolutely irate, right? And so Jordan's just looking at her like, why are you acting like this, right? Eventually, the father comes home. He breaks up everything. And of course, who gets in trouble? Jordan does. It's surprising to me at this point that the father never thought to sit Tina down and be like, what exactly is happening? Why is Jordan lashing out so much? Why is there always some type of situation that I have to come home to, right? He just off bat took Miss Tina aside and just assumed Jordan was in the wrong. Her father sends Jordan to her room. She goes up there crying. She at this point had saved up all summer with her little sister by not buying lunches, and got her like a little prepaid phone with some minutes on it. So she's calling her friends, asking for advice, asking for support. They basically tell her, the minute that you can leave that house and come over, just come over, right? So the next day she wakes up, she leaves, and her father basically tells her like, when I'm not home, don't be home. Just like, let's separate y'all two. So she leaves. So she ends up going to a friend's house.
Let's separate y'all two. That's a child and an adult, and you feel the necessary to just say, let's separate y'all two. How about you put her ass out? You shouldn't have married her. And it seemed like you married her pretty quick after your other marriage. Like, separate you two like they two kids and you put them on punishment? Boy, bye.
Friend's house after the fight, and she's like combing her hair out. She's crying. Clumps of her hair are coming out because Miss Tina was pulling at it, and her friend's mom ends up overhearing it. She's like, oh no, baby, we cannot have this happen ever again. So she basically decides to start feeding Jordan, making sure that she either goes home with some food or eats at that house before she goes home, and telling her like, I need to see you every day to make sure you're okay. Her friend's mom even offers Jordan a place to stay for the rest of the year. She's like, you can stay with us if you want to. And at this point, she's like, I need to, start forming my plan to what I'm going to do when I leave this house, right? So she's at her senior year. She starts applying for schools, and she's hoping to get into this like 5-year bachelor's/master's program. And her parents don't even believe it's real. Like her stepmom and her dad are like, that's not a real thing. She's like, yeah, it wasn't at the school fair. It wasn't at the school tour where they explained this to us. Like, it's very much real. You could have done your own research, looked it up, and seen that it was real. It was a 5-year accounting school at SFA, and they were like, yeah, that's not a real thing. Her older cousin ends up intervening. This is when Jordan finds out that none of the paperwork that she needed turned in for school was ever turned in. The school basically had no knowledge of her ever applying, nothing of the sort. And so while everybody else was finding out like what colleges they got accepted to and things like that, Jordan had nothing in the mail. And so she basically ends up talking to her cousin, coming up with a plan that when she graduates, she's going to move in with her older cousin. The day that Jordan graduated from high school, she moved out of her father's house. As she's walking away, her stepmom's going to walk up to her and be like, give me the key. And Jordan's like, key to what? And she's like, give me the key to the house. And Jordan's like, I don't have your key to your house. I don't know what you're talking about. She ends up going to her friend's house, getting the key, giving it back to Miss Tina, and she never looked back. She never spoke to that woman ever again, and she has a very, very thin, surface level relationship with her father. She ended up living with her cousin. She tried to go to community college for a year afterwards, but she ended up needing some paperwork that had to do with like some type of immunity shots, but she wasn't able to get the information in on time, and she ended up not continuing on with community college. She ended up getting into, the workforce and just building up her career that way. She never ended up going to college, which honestly broke my heart, because I feel like had this woman never entered her life, who knows where she would have been, right? She seemed like a very bright young lady. The mother side of the family never knew what was really going on. When they did finally find out, they were outraged, they were saddened, they wish they would have known so they could have intervened and done something for her. Ultimately, she ended up just working and moving out of her cousin's place and getting her own place and just, living life like that. She ended up not having the closest relationship with her grandparents moving forward either, because when she finally told her grandmother everything that was going on, all her grandmother really had to say was, well, what did you do? Well, what was your part in all of this? Instead of accepting her and being like, maybe this woman is off, there's something that needed to be done, she just kept trying to pacify the situation. And so that ended up causing a rift in their relationship. Her grandmother did end up passing away, and now that her grandfather is living with Miss Tina and the father, I think he finally got to see the side of Miss Tina that only Jordan had really experienced experienced. Her grandfather said something to her to the effects of, I don't care what's going on between you and that woman, you need to come and visit me though. Jordan was able to get the contact information of Wendy after high school, and they did have about an hour or two conversation on the phone. It did not, matriculate to kind of like a steady relationship. They just kind of like caught up for a little bit and then moved on with their lives. They both do wish each other love and happiness, but their relationship was forever changed. On Wendy's side, she was being told that Jordan didn't want to see her, she hated her, and vice versa. Jordan was being told the same thing as well. But come to find out, once they, was exchanging notes years later, neither of them said these things, but too much damage had been done. She does still have a close relationship with her sister's mother. That is one mother figure that she did not lose through all of this. She said, her and her boyfriend are in a good place too, looking forward towards marriage and children. And she's saying like, even though I have a surface level relationship with my father now, I know that's going to change once I, get to these milestones. I'm not going to let him walk me down the aisle. I'm not going to, have him around my children. Definitely not going to have Miss Tina around my children. But I think after sharing the story and then all of us kind of like pouring into her and being like, yo, your father was very much complicit. She is now looking at the relationship that she has with her father and being like, I need to reevaluate this. I think I did let him off with too much grace, which I'm not mad at. That's your father. You have every right to forgive him if you want to. Acknowledging the hurt that he caused you, also him allowing your relationship to get diminished so much, I think that is something that you should, examine. So I'm really glad that TikTok was able to like guide you towards that. Outside of that though, Jordan, I'm sending you so much love. I'm sorry that you had to go through this at such a young age. No adult should be preying on a child like that. That is an insecure, insufficient woman. Insufficient. Because she within herself was not happy, all she could do was tear the people around her, and unfortunately the only person around her was you, and you did not deserve for that to happen to her. Whatever demons she was fighting, whatever evil spirits were within her, was her business, and she had no right to spew that on you. So I'm so sorry that happened to you. The fact that you said that you still have a kind and loving heart regardless of what this woman did to you, I love that, because a lot of people feel like, oh, I've been through shitty things, I get to be a shitty person now. And you said, no, I'm still going to be kind. I'm still going to be, a remorseful, forgiving person. That makes you the winner. As always, send Jordan some love. You guys tagged me in this a bunch. I'm so sorry that it took me a while to get this out. I'm so sick. I think you guys can still hear it in my voice, but I missed you guys and I wanted to make sure I got a video out to you. So I appreciate you guys as always. I hope you have a beautiful day.
Y'all, before I put my 2 cents in it, let's give a round of applause to the storyteller, because this was a 8 step, like a 8 video, or how they said, part 1, part 2. It was 8 parts. It was 8 parts to this story, and she broke it down in one session. So let's give a round of applause to this storyteller. And the link to her TikTok will be down in the description, where she do other videos on TikTok like this. Y'all, this woman was evil. Something was mentally wrong with her. And a lot of times, no excuse, but a lot of times something happened to her when she was little in this same exact manner. Her mother, stepmother, someone did the same thing to her, and she passed it down to this young lady. And it was more easy for her because it wasn't her child. But then again, I'll take that back, because she got kids of her own that literally did not live with her. And the son warned this young lady that to watch her back. So she probably just like this all around. Evil, conniving, low down, sneaky, and abusive. Like, she's been like this. And I wouldn't put it past, your daddy was clear to the whole fact. He knew it wasn't you. You his daughter. He knows his child. You and him was so close. He should have had warning signs to be like, something ain't right. This ain't my daughter. Bitch, what you doing to my child? Like, but he wanted to go a blind eye for some woman that he quickly married after divorcing his other wife. Like, this was his karma, but you was receiving all the backslash. Like, you was receiving all the hateful stuff from this lady. It was really meant for your dad, but since he wasn't home, your dad karma got to you. Because, as you say, the woman he was married to before marrying this woman was nice, gentle, kind, and you looked at her like your mother. Who's to say that your dad didn't do something to cause their separation, their divorce? and got with this lady, like, because they got together quick. But you did not deserve that. You are a beautiful person inside and out. And I hope you keep thriving in life and be around people that is going to love, protect, and honor you. And when they come around you, they light up because they're happy to be in your space. Like, they're happy to be around you. You did not deserve this. No child ever deserves a person to be cruel, evil, and mean to them. And your dad should be ashamed to himself to let this go on. Thanks to like your friends' parents and stuff like that. But you did not deserve this. And I'm happy that you're doing well now. And just continue to be you. You guys, drop down in the comments what you think about this story. Don't forget to join the family. I'm not going to say it no more. Well, yeah, I am going to say it because it's always new people watching every day. Subscribe and join the family. Just hit that subscribe button. You guys, thanks for watching this reaction video. I hope you have a blessed day. Peace.